He was the ultimate anti-hero of the spaghetti western genre, the figure who weaponized silence itself. LeeVanCleef forged his iconic status through a chilling intensity that could unsettle even Clint Eastwood. But the true surprise lay not in his piercing gaze, it was in the hidden roster of fellow actors he deeply resented. Those rivalries simmered for years, ignited by ego clashes, perceived slights, and off-screen incidents never filmed. Did these conflicts stem from professional jealousy or from a single glare that crossed the line? Number 1. Clint Eastwood. The actor LeeVanCleef held the strongest grudge against was Clint Eastwood, and the cause might astonish you. Their partnership began as collaborators in 1965, amid the dusty landscapes of Almeria, Spain, during the production of For a Few Dollars More. VanCleef was already an experienced portrayer of Hollywood antagonists, while Eastwood emerged as the rising American lead with his understated lethal poise. On screen, their chemistry was flawless. Off-screen, the dynamic shifted entirely. Away from the cameras, VanCleef observed a recurring behavior. Eastwood, affable and courteous on set, seemed to distance himself upon returning to America. In reflections years later, VanCleef expressed resentment, stating bitterly, "Clint went full Hollywood. He forgot those who were there at the beginning." That remark captures the essence. The performer who contributed to Eastwood's rise to international fame felt overshadowed. By 1973, as Eastwood began helming his own projects, such as High Plains Drifter and the outlaw Josie Wales, ideal chances arose for VanCleef to return to mainstream American westerns, yet no invitations arrived. VanCleef contacted Malpaso Productions, Eastwood's outfit, seeking opportunities, only for his inquiries to go unanswered. Accounts from industry veterans in Rome note that rare encounters at European events saw Eastwood offer courteous nods, but little more than superficial politeness. It amounted to a gradual sense of abandonment. VanCleef saw the emerging star ascend to global fame, while his own recognition from European spaghetti westerns failed to cross over fully stateside. He avoided direct public criticism of Eastwood, but the underlying bitterness lingered privately. On-set whispers described VanCleef grumbling about being exploited and forgotten, about scaling heights only to be abandoned. Their alliance never mended afterward. The former protege had turned into the perceived ingrate, and the animosity endured unchanged. Number 2. John Wayne. The mutual disdain between John Wayne and LeeVanCleef reached depths that surprised even their collaborative crews. It ignited the instant VanCleef overheard Wayne belittle European westerns as inexpensive imitations of authentic cowboy tales. VanCleef interpreted this as a direct affront, not merely to the style he had mastered, but to every effort he invested in building his path from obscurity. On a Los Angeles studio lot in 1965, as Wayne passed a promotional display for a few dollars more, he allegedly remarked emphatically to his group, "Those Italians won't ever match the genuine Western." VanCleef, close enough to hear clearly, reacted visibly, clenching his jaw, and from then on declined to acknowledge Wayne's presence. The strain intensified into the late 1960s. VanCleef had solidified his standing throughout Europe via Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns, with his works gaining traction in the U.S. Wayne embodied the classic patriotic American screen cowboy, supported by directors like John Ford. To VanCleef, Wayne's arrogance and rejection of his achievements were unbearable. Insider reports from Paramount indicate VanCleef purposely evaded Wayne at all industry gatherings. They never shared dialogue. At one 1967 promotional event, when a shared acquaintance attempted an introduction, VanCleef reclined, fixed an unblinking stare on Wayne, and murmured quietly, "I don't bother with figureheads." Wayne registered the comment, but dismissed it as typical rigidity from an overseas performer. Into the 1970s, the separation became irreversible. They never co-starred, never communicated further, and per recollections from European festival attendees, VanCleef declined to share seating with Wayne at any formal functions. VanCleef's quiet disdain for the reigning cowboy icon grew notorious in Hollywood's inner circles. Number 3. Charles Bronson. Van Cleef's anger toward Charles Bronson flared more intensely than toward others listed. The conflict originated in Italy during the early 1970s, as both competed for the protagonist spot in Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West. Van Cleef had partnered closely with Leone on For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, logically anticipating the lead in the upcoming masterpiece. Then Bronson entered, imposing, somber, and captivating. Leone selected him. Van Cleef experienced shock, degradation, and profound disloyalty. On location in Almeria, Spain, observers noted the palpable strain. Whenever Van Cleef and Bronson occupied the same space, eye contact was minimal. Van Cleef allegedly remarked during pauses, "A stone slab could display greater expressiveness." Oh, Bronson appeared indifferent or oblivious, proceeding through takes with his signature stoic demeanor. The grudge deepened gradually. As Bronson's popularity in Europe surged, Van Cleef sensed displacement, relegated to lesser European efforts he previously would have rejected. Production teams observed Van Cleef's frustration and adjusted timetables to prevent overlaps. In one instance, a small dispute regarding equipment intensified, prompting Van Cleef to exit abruptly while Bronson stayed composed. That event symbolized their rivalry. Even in later reflections, Van Cleef spoke candidly about Bronson, faulting his rapid ascent lacking equivalent formal training and acting techniques that Van Cleef had pursued. Still, Van Cleef conceded Bronson's appeal to viewers. The resentment extended beyond missed opportunities. It involved fidelity, acknowledgement, and feelings of treachery from one who claimed the prominence Van Cleef believed, destined for himself. Into the late 1970s, the pair fully evaded contact. Van Cleef sought no resolution, and the standoff continued subtly until his passing. Number 4. Yul Brynner. From his initial encounter with Yul Brynner, LeeVanCleef harbored intense dislike. It was instinctive. Brynner entered spaces with an air of ownership, demanding focus through his sleek appearance, upright bearing, and natural allure. Van Cleef viewed it as extreme conceit. At a 1967 film festival platform in Rome, Brynner derogated European westerns in a dismissive quip, beginner dramatics for viewers unfamiliar with true filmmaking. Van Cleef absorbed it profoundly. The rivalry accelerated soon after. Studios sought to unite them in a European western. But Brynner declined, asserting he refused screen sharing with a secondary shooter. Van Cleef regarded this as a deliberate slight. He abandoned audition sessions, skipped publicity appearances, and informed associates, "I avoid those who mistake vanity for ability." The barb resonated more because Van Cleef's path relied on perseverance, rigor, and proven genuineness. Throughout 1970s honors events, they exchanged no words. Van Cleef positioned himself distantly, maintaining a steady, icy gaze on Brynner. Brynner reveled in the spotlight, offering witty remarks that elicited amusement, as Van Cleef's silent scorn built quietly. Their dynamic exemplified composure against ostentation. Number 5. Telly Savalas. Van Cleef required no prompt to detest Telly Savalas. Upon witnessing Savalas stride confidently onto a Rome location in the mid-1970s, cigar in mouth and outsized confidence, the aversion arose immediately. From day one, as timetables coincided, Savalas imitated Van Cleef's impassive squint mockingly before the team, exhaling smoke as if dominating the scene. Van Cleef halted, held a prolonged stare, and departed silently. The discord intensified rapidly. Planning sessions became unspoken contests of demeanor. Team recollections highlight charged atmospheres in shared spaces. Savalas paraded across locations, joking and displaying flair, whereas Van Cleef stood immovable, allowing his restrained threat to convey more than speech. Van Cleef clarified he would avoid future collaborations with Savalas. In private discussions with peers, he stated simply, "That man irritates me immensely." The disdain was profound, shaping all encounters. At European cinema events or ceremonies, Van Cleef stationed himself oppositely, his frosty glare sending an unmistakable signal. Savalas paid no heed, thriving in attention. By the late 1970s, all ties were cut. To Van Cleef, Savalas embodied traits he loathed: arrogance lacking substance, showiness devoid of restraint, and spotlight grabbing that overshadowed genuine artistry. That's the end of today's video. Which of these iconic rivalries surprised you the most? Can you picture confronting a former collaborator only to sense abandonment? Share your reactions in the comments and tell us which conflict stunned you. Thanks for watching.